like trash to be discarded. They thought I was done, just an old man in a wheelchair half broken from 2 strokes and a failing liver waiting for the clock to tick its last. But what they didn't know was that I was watching them listening even if I stayed quiet. My name is Leonard. I'm 67, and for the past 8 years I've battled liver disease and degenerative nerve damage. I don't walk well, I don't speak fast, but my mind, that's still sharper than the knives they were sticking in my back. It started small. My daughter-in-law June would accidentally forget to give me my meds on time. My son Marcus started handling my bills until I noticed strange withdrawals and unfamiliar signatures. They thought I didn't notice. I noticed everything. I just didn't say a word. Yet. They were whispering in the kitchen when they thought I was asleep. "He's not going to make it through winter," June said coldly. "If we get that power of attorney now, we won't have to deal with probate or that damn will." My heart didn't break. It hardened. I raised Marcus. I put him through college. I bought them their first house when he got married. I took care of them through every layoff, every emergency. Now they were circling me like vultures. But I had a secret, one they never even thought to ask about. 3 years ago, when my health declined, I started selling antiques online, just to feel useful. At first, it was small coins, old vinyl vintage tools. I used an alias, Old Grain 54. People loved it. Then it grew. I partnered with a young couple I met at a flea market who handled the shipping and listing. The money flowed, not millions, but enough to live independently. Enough to be free. I never connected it to my bank account. It went to a private trust. They thought they knew everything. But they didn't know what I was doing late at night when I asked to be left alone with my laptop. They thought I was scrolling for cat videos. No, I was preparing for war, quietly, legally. I wanted to believe they'd come to their senses. I waited. I gave them chances. But what they gave me in return was contempt. One morning, June stood at my door with a stack of papers and a smile that dripped venom. "Sign this, Dad. It'll make things easier for everyone." I looked up at her and smiled for the first time in weeks. "Sure," I said, but not the papers she expected. They came for my money. That morning, as she handed me the documents, June wore a fake kindness that barely covered her greed. "It just gives Marcus the ability to manage your affairs, in case something happens," she chirped, flipping through the papers like she was offering me a bingo card instead of a legal noose. Power of attorney. They wanted it all. I held the pen in my shaking hand, pretended to fumble, and looked confused on purpose. "Where do I sign again, sweetheart?" I asked, buying time. "Right here," she said quickly, pointing with a perfectly manicured nail. She always looked so polished on the outside. I turned the page again and again, scanning for the trick. It was all there. Legal language, medical decisions, financial control, total access. They were planning to erase me before I was gone. "Maybe we should get someone to explain it," I said slowly. "You know how my head gets cloudy sometimes." She rolled her eyes. "It's basic stuff, Dad. You trust us, don't you?" My jaw clenched, but I nodded. I didn't want to tip my hand yet. They underestimated me, thinking illness equaled ignorance. What they didn't know was I had already moved my primary accounts months ago. Not just the antique business earnings, but the house deed, the stocks, even my life insurance, all now in a hidden trust protected by a legal shield they couldn't touch. I had also recorded every conversation, every time they called me useless, every time they joked about my funeral, every time they whispered about how this house would be better without that damn chair taking up space. 2 nights later, I woke up to find Marcus sitting across from me in the dark. "You know," he said, his voice low, "if you don't sign those papers, we'll have to consider other options." I stared into the face of the boy I once bounced on my knee and now saw a stranger. "You'd really do that to your own father?" I asked softly. He leaned in close, a bitter smile on his face. "You think anyone else is going to wipe your ass when June's gone?" That night I cried. Not out of fear, but grief. For the family I thought I had. For the son I once knew. But as the tears fell, my resolve hardened. They wanted the sick old man to roll over and die quietly. What they got instead was a patient, methodical man with a plan they couldn't unravel. The next morning I called my lawyer. Not the one they knew, the one they didn't. "Time to prepare the counterattack," I said. "You ready to expose them?" he asked. I looked out the window and smiled at the rising sun. Not yet. Let them think they've won a little longer. They wanted me gone. After that night, things changed. They didn't even try to hide their intentions anymore. Meals became irregular. My medication was forgotten. My wheelchair's battery mysteriously died more often than not. They were starving me slowly, subtly, but I kept smiling, because I knew how this would end. "I think he's losing it," June told Marcus in the hallway, not realizing I had placed a recording device under the floor vent. "He called me Shirley yesterday." "I say we stop the meds altogether," Marcus muttered. "He's not going to last much longer, and every day he clings to life we're burning money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own son, the boy I once cradled through asthma attacks, paid college tuition for, bailed out of credit card debt, now plotting to let me die. But I didn't react. I played my part. I drooled a little more at dinner. I stared blankly at the TV when they walked by. I murmured nonsense under my breath when the nurse was present. I became their perfect pawn until they were sure I was nothing more than a breathing wallet. In secret, I messaged my business partners, Chloe and Don. They were both in their early 30s, sharp, loyal, and had no idea how bad things were until I sent them audio files. "Leonard," Chloe said in a hushed call, "this is abuse. We need to call the authorities." "Not yet," I said. "They're not just cruel, they're greedy. I need them to believe they've won. Then we'll act." "Why not just walk away?" Don asked. "Because they do it to someone else next. Someone without a plan." One night I pretended to pass out. June rushed in, faked concern for the cameras. She didn't know I'd installed myself months ago. "Oh no, Leonard, wake up," she said, slapping my face with just enough force to hurt, not enough to show. She waited 3 full minutes before calling 911. I lay there counting seconds, heart hammering, hearing everything, the rustling as she checked my drawers, the snap of latex gloves as she rifled through my medicine cabinet. The paramedics arrived just in time to find me awake, weak but stable. I caught one's eye and whispered, "Tell the doctor to check the meds. Not everything I've been given is prescribed." That was the beginning of their unraveling. While they fumbled to explain why I'd been left alone for so long, I made one more move. I transferred final ownership of the antique business to a charity trust under Chloe's care, with legal notes to be opened later. I didn't want money. I wanted legacy, and I wanted them to see it slip from their grasp. They were planning their final strike, but I was ready to strike back. The power they couldn't steal. They thought they had broken me. After the hospital visit, Marcus played the concerned son on camera. "We just want what's best for Dad," he told the nurse. June brought flowers, cooked dinner for once, barely hiding her revulsion as she placed the plate in front of me, like I was a dog. It was an act. Everything they did was now performance because they knew social workers were sniffing around. But behind closed doors, they whispered faster, panicked. I heard Marcus mutter, "If he talks, we're screwed." I didn't just plan to talk, I planned to shout. They had no idea how far I'd taken my precautions. My antique business, Old Grain 54, had exploded in the last year thanks to a viral post about America's coolest grandpa hustler. People bought just to support an old man's dream. Except I wasn't alone. Chloe and Don now managed nearly everything using encrypted messaging apps, anonymous shipping labels, and a rented workspace in the next state, all under the radar. I had fake spreadsheets stored on the old desktop in my room once, showing I had only a few $100 left. Marcus even gloated as he scrolled through them one night, unaware that the real financials were stored on a separate hard drive hidden in the leg of my wheelchair. I wasn't just protecting money, I was protecting dignity. June pushed one step further. She scheduled an appointment with a specialist to assess whether I needed full-time institutional care. They wanted me gone out of their house and their lives, but I beat her to the punch. A week before the evaluation, I sent Don and Chloe instructions to initiate lock protocol. That included sending notarized letters from my lawyer to several banks freezing any accounts tied to Marcus, authorizing the legal trust to go public with an expose if anything happened to me, sending secure packages to 5 media contacts with recordings, video footage, and medical records, and most importantly, scheduling a final family meeting on my terms. I sat in my living room wearing the same blanket they once used to cover me up during visits. I looked frail, broken, until the doorbell rang. A lawyer, a banker, a notary. June's face turned chalk white. "What is this?" I turned to her slowly. "You wanted me to sign something, didn't you?" "Let's all sign some things today." I handed her a copy of the trust documents. Her jaw dropped when she saw the name of the business, the assets, the valuation. You lied," Marcus stammered. "You said you were broke." "I never said that," I replied, smiling. "You just assumed I was helpless." June screamed, knocking the papers out of my hand. But it was too late. They had already lost. The day the lawyer came, the room was still as stone. June's eyes darted around like a trapped animal. Marcus stood frozen, pale as the documents in his hand. The lawyer, Mr. Whitmore, an old friend I'd quietly retained for years, calmly laid out the facts with the sharpness of a guillotine. "These papers here," he said, tapping the table, "show that Mr. Leonard Jacobs established an independent trust 3 years ago. All major assets, house insurance, business revenue were moved legally under that umbrella. Neither of you, Marcus or June, have any claim to it." But he's senile," June shrieked. "He can't even remember what day it is." "Oh, I remember exactly what day it is," I said. "It's the day you lose," Mr. Whitmore continued. "Furthermore, the recordings and camera footage have been submitted to a legal investigator. Evidence of elder abuse, neglect, and financial manipulation. That alone carries criminal liability." June lunged forward. "You little snake, you tricked us." The banker stood. And I'm here on behalf of Golden Branch Credit Union to inform you, Marcus, that all shared access to Mr. Jacobs' former accounts has been terminated. You can't do this, Marcus yelled, standing up. I'm his son. No, I said slowly, you're my biggest disappointment. For a moment, Marcus's face twisted with something that almost resembled guilt. Then it hardened. This is insane. You're dying, Dad. You're not thinking straight. I may be dying, I said, but I'm thinking clearer than I have in years, and I made sure everything I built goes somewhere it matters. From the next room, Chloe and Don stepped in. I had invited them quietly. Their eyes scanned the carnage of my son's face. This is Chloe and Don, I announced. My business partners, and the legal stewards of my trust. They'll continue the company after I'm gone. The profits will fund a scholarship foundation for low-income students from broken families, kids who deserve more than I gave mine. Marcus staggered back. You're giving it away, to strangers. To people who earned it, I said firmly. You'll die alone, June hissed. No, I'll die free. As Mr. Whitmore packed up the documents, the notary recorded the final signatures and the banker left with a polite nod. Marcus and June stood in stunned silence. I turned to them one last time. You cut me off in every way that mattered. All I did was return the favor. They left without another word. I wheeled myself to the window and watched the sunset with a peace I hadn't felt in years. The battle was over, and I hadn't just survived it. I had won. Their world crumbled, mine rose. The next week was strangely quiet. Marcus and June moved out the same night, their bags packed in a frantic storm of curses and slammed doors. They left behind nothing but their stench and my freedom. For the first time in years, I slept soundly, not because I was cured, but because I was finally in control. The authorities followed up quickly. With the recordings, medication logs, and testimony from the nurse I secretly hired weeks earlier, the state filed charges. Emotional abuse, financial exploitation, neglect of a vulnerable adult. They didn't go to prison, but they were fined, heavily placed under court scrutiny, and their reputations were left in shreds. My neighbors started whispering, "Did you hear what his son did to him? I always thought she looked fake." And suddenly I wasn't the feeble man in the wheelchair anymore. I was the man who fought back. Don and Chloe helped me set up in a smaller apartment downtown, sunny, accessible, peaceful. There were days I still struggled. My liver didn't miraculously heal. I still needed help, but now I had people who wanted to help, not because they had to, but because they respected me. The business thrived. Chloe launched a digital storefront and Don set up monthly auctions. We hired 2 interns. One was a young man who reminded me of Marcus before greed took him. I mentored him carefully, watching for signs of hunger and heart. A month later, a letter arrived. No return address. It was from Marcus. Dad, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I got lost. I thought I deserved more, that I was entitled, but you were right to do what you did. June left. I'm working again, starting over. I hope someday I can earn back a sliver of your trust. I read it twice, then set it on the table and looked out the window. I didn't know if I'd ever speak to him again, but I knew I wouldn't let his regret chain me. I had my peace. And peace, I'd learned, is the most valuable inheritance of all. The antique shop's next listing, a vintage silver mirror. Caption for those who finally see the truth. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: illness makes you vulnerable, but it doesn't make you powerless. People will try to measure your worth by your mobility, your money, or your silence. Don't let them. Speak when it counts. Plan ahead. Trust your instincts even when your body betrays you. To anyone out there who's feeling trapped by family, age, or disease, remember, you still have value. You still have fight. And sometimes the quietest revenge is living your truth out loud with dignity no one can take away. Protect yourself. Build your circle wisely, and never assume love cannot rot into something else when greed takes root. I didn't win because I was strong. I won because I prepared, and because I refused to die quietly.